who want to block China's unification with China's Taiwan will be doomed to failure.
Victor Gao is an expert in Chinese affairs and an unofficial mouthpiece for the regime in Beijing. Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization think tank, he's a former diplomat who was the interpreter for Communist leader Deng Xiaoping. If the US does intervene in Taiwan and Australia supports them, what will happen to Australia?
Listen, if Australia goes to fight together with the US soldiers in China's drive for reunification between China's mainland and China's Taiwan, then you are talking about the worst thing you can dream of. A war between China and the United States will soon escalate out of control, and that will be Armageddon, Armageddon, and Armageddon. And this is what I hope the Australian people will come to realize, that you need to deal with China with respect as much as you give to the United States.
Through simulated invasions, China has been showing off the military might it could unleash if Taiwan puts up a fight. At the sprawling Zuraha training base in Inner Mongolia, troops are schooled in street-to-street combat in a mock Taipei. As you can see from these satellite images and from these photos, there's even a building with an extraordinary resemblance to Taiwan's presidential headquarters. It's all designed to send a message. We are armed, we are ready, and we can make a move whenever we want.
Let the Chinese people do their mission. Let China's mainland unite with Taiwan, and that will make the Chinese, the Americans, the Australians, and mankind as a whole happier and safer.
You said Australia should show China more respect, but it sounds to me like you want Australia to kneel down before China and fear them.
Absolutely not. I think China probably at the heart is a country of pandas. Do you really want to fear a panda? Do you think a kangaroo will fear a panda? Probably not. A panda probably will run away in front of a leg-kicking kangaroo.
This is what we will get all the time from, as people say, the panda huggers. I believe that the Chinese Communist Party's aim is to be dominant in this region and perhaps dominant in the world. And this is a zero-sum game. It must remove America from the Western Pacific in order to be dominant in this region. Simple as that.
Few have a handle on the strategic perils of the Taiwan issue, quite like Australia's former Major General, Jim Molan. A lot of experts are looking in the crystal ball at the moment, trying to figure out if and when there would be war over Taiwan. When do you think this is likely to all play out?
Fundamentally, given the power that they have now in their military, they could act any time from now on. And that's what frightens me more than anything.
So if a move on Taiwan does happen, how's it likely to play out? Jim Molan believes there are three likely possibilities.
The first scenario is what I call the incremental model. China places a blockade around Taiwan, a no-sail, no-fly blockade, says to Taiwan, OK, well, you can happily go bankrupt Taiwan, and let's see what the Americans do. Now, the Chinese can back off if the Americans come through with overwhelming force, which I don't believe they can. But until then, China may be able to achieve its aim without fighting. The second scenario is a sudden attack, a Pearl Harbor type attack, to take out all the American bases in Japan, in South Korea and in Guam. And then they turn around and say to Taiwan, well, what do you reckon, Taiwan? Do you want to be destroyed by us? The third model is to do them both.
The second China starts targeting US military assets, surely then it's a very slippery slope towards all-out nuclear war.
No, I don't believe that's the case. America would be foolish, even though it may have suffered a tactical defeat, to use nuclear weapons because it would start losing American cities.
It's a terrifying prospect, the two biggest powers in the world going toe-to-toe. But as you'll see, there are strong reasons to believe war is not as likely as some might think. A quarry on the northern outskirts of Melbourne seems an unlikely testing ground for the weapons of tomorrow. But here, a war game in miniature is underway.
3, 2, 1.
Defentex is a Victorian company developing autonomous drones for the battlefield. It's headed up by Travis Reddy, who believes these diminutive weapons could be a critical part of Australia's arsenal.
It's cheap, it's expendable, and can group together in a mass or a swarm so that we can have this big impact in the battlefield.
How much are your developments made for the sole purpose of helping a country with a small defence force like Australia take on a big force like China?
That's ultimately the reason that we exist.
Each tiny flying machine can carry a powerful payload.
It could be a smoke round, an anti-tank round, an anti-personnel round, a radio retransmission system.
But their real strength comes when they swarm in huge numbers. If you end up getting hundreds or thousands of these drones working together at one time, what can they actually achieve?
Yeah, they can have a devastating effect.
It's early days yet, but increasingly cheap autonomous drones are being viewed as a key to modern warfare, particularly for nations like Australia.
We're a very small country. We have a very small defence force. So we have to maximise the impact that every individual soldier can have.
So this could be a big tactical advantage for the little guy.
100%.
And I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal. Appreciate it, Mr. Prime Minister.
Right now, of course, Australia's focus is on the much bigger military hardware that'll result from the AUKUS Pact. It'll be a couple of decades yet before the cementing of the relationship with our two most trusted allies results in shiny new nuclear submarines. Former Major General Jim Molan fears that's far too late.
It's excellent to have something out there in the future, 10, 20 years away. The question I've got is, what are we going to do for the next war? And the next war is not going to be 10 or 20 years away. It's going to be in the next 3 to 10 years. My estimate is in a serious fight, the Australian Defence Force only has enough missiles for days. This is not going to be resolved in days. And of course, we're not big enough. We should expand the Defence Force significantly.
It's a pretty bleak picture you paint. It sounds like we're stuffed.
I don't think being stuffed is a strategic word that I've used very often, but it's not bad. We should fund defence now based on our assessment of the national security strategy, which is based on the war that we want to win.
In short, you think Australia needs to prepare for war tomorrow?
Absolutely.
One thing is clear, while Australia's new subs will be nuclear powered, they won't be carrying nuclear warheads. But veteran Communist Party loyalist Victor Gao says Australia has already crossed the nuclear line.
I would say the AUKUS deal in itself, by enabling Australia to build nuclear submarines, will have one big consequence for Australia. That is, Australia will no longer enjoy the benefit and the very rare privilege of not being targeted with nuclear weapons going forward.
I think you're comparing oranges and apples there. Australia is doing a deal for nuclear-powered subs. They're not getting nuclear weapons. Why should Australia then be a target of nuclear weapons?
Listen to me. The tubes in a submarine can be armed with both nuclear warheads and conventional warheads. Now, in the heat of a battle or in the heat of a war, do you think Australia will allow inspection as to what kind of warhead you put into that big tube? I can bet you, in the heat of battle, no one will pause, and the safe approach is to target Australia as a nuclear-armed country.